just going to start. Welcome, everyone.
Recording in progress.
Welcome. I now call this meeting of the Somerville City Council to order. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the City Council may be conducted via remote participation. Please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on local access government channels and on the City of Somerville website and will be available for future review. Will the clerk please call the roll?
This is roll call. Councilor Mba.
Present.
Councilor Wilson.
Present.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Present.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yeah.
Councilor Burnley.
Present.
Councilor Said.
Here.
Councilor Strezzo.
Present.
Councilor Klingon.
Present.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Here.
With 11 councilors present, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Clerk. Pursuant to our Rule 32, let it be known that the City Council salutes the flag of the United States of America, and let us recall our oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth to the best of our abilities and understanding. We'll begin this meeting with a moment of silence, and I'll ask if any councilors wish to say a few words about members of our community that we have lost. Okay, will everyone in the chamber who is able please rise for a moment of silence? You may be seated. Thank you. Colleagues, we have a full agenda ahead of us this evening. I will share our items that we're taking out of order. We'll start with our citation, which is 10.1, and we'll do our public hearings. We're then going to take the confirmation of appointments committee report, which is 6A. We have some promotions ahead of us this evening. At that point, we'll take a very brief recess to take some pictures, both with our candidates that are up for promotion and with our 311 team that are here for the citation. When we come back, we will then take up items 4.14, 4.5, and 10.6, all that have sponsored speakers ahead of us. We will then take up items 10.23 and 10.24 out of order, followed by 7.1, which is our executive session. And then we'll come back and resume the regular items at that point. Madam Clerk, will you read the next item, please?
The next item is going to be approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 13th, 2025.
Seeing no opposition, the minutes are approved. Next item.
And then the first item that we'll take out of order is item 10.1, a citation by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld, commending 311 Somerville for nearly 20 years of dedicated service.
Wonderful. Colleagues, they are celebrating, 311, our amazing 311 team, are celebrating 20 years this year. So I do have a citation. I think we all probably have our own 311 stories. I remembered when I was campaigning the first year, and people at the doors would ask me, questions about potholes and things in the sidewalks to fix and things in the playground to fix, and I would just submit them on 301, and they thought I was magic. And I just think it's so exciting to be able to celebrate this moment and all of the work this team does. During COVID, I was working side by side with Director Craig and saw firsthand the dramatic increase in calls to 311 and how they were able to handle it incredibly well and incredibly professionally. So let me read your citation out to you. Be it hereby known to all that the Somerville City Council and the Mayor offer their sincerest commendations to 311 Somerville for nearly 20 years of dedicated service. 311 Somerville, which launched in December 2005 as New England's first 311 call center, has adapted to community needs and offered exemplary support and assistance to residents. The City Council and the Mayor acknowledge the continued contribution of 311 staff to strengthening transparency and trust within the city, offered this 13th day of March 2025 by the entire City Council. Congratulations.
Through the chair,
Director
Steve
Craig.
Craig, Director of Constituent Services. I just wanted to very briefly thank all of you for the citation and your ongoing support. I am extremely proud of the group of people behind me and everyone else that makes 311 operate, and I just wanted to share my gratitude with everybody. Thank you.
Okay, congratulations. Next item, Madam Clerk.
The next item is going to be item 3.1, a grant of location from Eversource to install approximately 256 feet of conduit in Prospect Street from manhole 23058 to 2 points of pickup at 121 Prospect Street and an existing conduit.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Jackie Duffy.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Great, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. We would like to install approximately 256 feet of conduit in Prospect Street, and this is to provide electric service to 121 Prospect Street. It will be a 32-unit building.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? No other hands. Seeing no one else, I declare the public hearing closed. Colleagues, any questions? Councilor Scott.
Madam President, I'm just apparently Legistar, where these documents are uploaded, is having some problems loading this agenda item, so I can't review the PDFs of the application. If I could ask that this just be held until I can make sure that I don't have any questions to ask. Appreciate it.
Madam Clerk.
Councilors, if you click on the PDF agenda, and then from there, you click on the links within, it will open up to the documents. I don't know what's happening. I do have, I think, 3 tickets in at this point to try to fix the issue on that main page, but the PDF agenda can get you there.
All right, appreciate it. Then I'd ask, Madam President, if you just leave this on the table for a few moments, move on to the next public hearing.
Sure. Let's lay this on the table, Madam Clerk, and read the next item.
The next item is item 3.2, a grant of location from Eversource to install approximately 128 feet of conduit and 1 new manhole in Summer Street from utility pole 325/28 to a point of pickup at 162 Summer Street.
I now declare this public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Jackie Duffy.
Jackie Duffy, Eversource. We would like to install 128 feet of conduit and 1 new manhole. This is to provide electric service to 162 Summer Street. The customer is going underground from overhead, and this will be a 24-unit building.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? No more hands. I declare the public hearing closed. Colleagues, any questions? Okay, seeing no opposition, this item is approved. Let me go back to the item that's on the table. Councilor Scott, is that all right? Should we give you more time?
Nope, thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to review it. There's just been a lot of disruptions down there on Prospect and some other utilities problems we've had near Houghton Street. So, but after reviewing the plans, I don't have any concerns about this. Would recommend approval. Thank you.
Okay. So item 3.1, seeing no other opposition, that item is approved. Next item.
The next item is going to be item 6A, a report of the Committee on Confirmation of Appointments and Personnel Matters, meeting on March 5th, 2025.
Councilor Ian Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. I am very glad to say the Committee on Confirmations met and recommended approval of 3 promotions for members of the Somerville Fire Department. We recommended approval of Christopher Galvin to Fire Lieutenant, Andrew Kachuk to Fire Lieutenant, and Thomas Bellini to Fire Captain. The committee was incredibly impressed by the service that these gentlemen have already provided to our community and is excited to see them officially get the nod. They've been serving in these as acting roles for a long time. Many of these folks are here, as well as their family and friends, so I'm looking forward to making these official tonight. I'd ask that the committee report be accepted as submitted.
Okay, any discussion? Committee report is accepted. Madam Clerk.
Okay. And we will swear in the now not candidates. We'll do captain first. We start at the top. All right, perfect. Let me have you raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly affirm that you will faithfully perform the duties incumbent on you as captain for the Somerville Fire Department, City of Somerville, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, under the pains and penalties of perjury? I do. All right, then I'm going to have you sign a statement to that effect right next to where your name is printed. I'll hold it there for you. All right, and then I'm going to sign. And it's official. Congratulations. Yeah. So we had Andrew Kachuk next. I'll have you raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly affirm that you will faithfully perform the duties incumbent on you as lieutenant for the Fire Department, City of Somerville, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
All right, then you're going to sign a statement to that effect. Oops, sorry, I'll give you the pen in the right way, right there. Kind of hold it for you. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, I'm ready when you are. I'll have you raise your right hand for me. Solemnly affirm that you will faithfully perform the duties incumbent on you as lieutenant for the Fire Department, City of Somerville, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, under the pains and penalties of perjury. All right, then you're going to sign as well, right next to where your name is printed there. I gotcha. All right, thank you. Congratulations.
All right, we'll take a brief recess now so we can take some photos, both with our new promotions and with our 311 staff. So colleagues, don't go far.
414, a resolution by Councilors Klingon, Wilson, Strezzo, Said, Ewenkamp, and Burnley, and Ba and Davis in support of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 and condemning attacks on disability rights.
You can add my name to that, Madam Clerk. Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you. So many of you, some of you may have heard of the 504. It's often it is, I'm not going to get into the whole history of the 504, but basically, many students utilize the 504. It's about reasonable accommodation. So how I want to start this off is basically explaining to you all, or maybe you know, that disability rights are under attack again, and here we are having to defend them. But this isn't just about disability rights. The basis of this starts in trans rights, or the provisions that the Biden administration added to the 504 are being challenged by 17 states in a lawsuit that calls the 504 unconstitutional based on those provisions, but actually in its third reasoning goes beyond that and essentially calls the entire 504 unconstitutional. The 504 section covers not only education, but disability rights, housing rights. Like I said, that when you hear the term reasonable accommodation, many people have heard that around the workplace. When somebody has a disability, they are afforded rights that would basically give them the same opportunities as everybody else. The 504 basically predated ADA, but is still extremely important as it focuses again on any program which we do have control of in that they take federal funds, and that is essentially the base of the 504. It is protections for folks working or receiving housing or anything within the realm of institutions that receive federal dollars. So that is why the the Persons with Disabilities Commission reached out. They also had a similar item before the school committee. So I think it's extremely important that Somerville, as usual, stands up and hopefully paves the way for others to stand up to this lawsuit and essentially this, again, attack on disability rights. So I've put forward this resolution with Councilor Wilson, and thank you all who signed on. And I actually have a few, two speakers I'd like to sponsor this evening. One of those speakers is the former director of the ARC of Massachusetts, Leo Sarkisian. He was the director for 33 years. He's basically a legend in the disability community, fighting for disability rights on every level. And I asked him to come and say a few words on this, basic attack on the Section 504. And what's happening with these lawsuits, and ultimately what some people view as a paving of the way to even remove the Americans with Disabilities Act, or even at least weaken it extremely. So this is extremely important for anybody who knows anybody who has had to, fell within the definition of having a disability and was able to have those protections at their workplace, in education, housing, etc. So with that, I would first like to call Leo Sarkisian. If you could make him able to speak. Thank you.
Leo?
All right. Thank you. And my connection appears to be a little funky. I don't know why, but thank you for this opportunity, Councilman Klingon, and I thank you to the City Council, and I just want to thank you all for your public service. You've got a big agenda tonight, so I'll be brief. And we strongly support the proposed resolution. The ARC is the largest advocacy organization in the Commonwealth of Mass for persons with disabilities, and our national counterpart is the largest national community-based organization advocating for and with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. So as discussed, I think pretty good summary. 504 was the basis or the foundation for the Americans with Disability Act, and it was the forerunner from 1973. It is known as the Rehabilitation Act. And of course, with that, an idea for education, it has an important place. And also, as mentioned, it relates to anywhere where there's federal funding that relates to disabilities. And there's a site, it's with which is the Disability Rights and Education Fund, and the ARC is partnering with them and others. And you can just Google DREDF.org, Protect 504, but I'm going to give you some of the bullets. Basically, the states aren't just trying to undo what President Biden just did in a new rulemaking recently before he stepped down. They're also trying to literally end 504's power across disability. 17 states are doing this. It covers all parts of society that receives money from the U.S. government. Its rules are important, especially in healthcare, education. And bottom line, here are some examples of the rules. For example, here's, just so you know, it's about our neighbors, our friends. For example, schools must include students with disabilities to help them learn. Many students, instead of getting an individualized education plan, can get a 504 plan. It's less complex, and it really makes a difference. Doctors and schools must have sign language interpreters if people are deaf or have hard of hearing and need to sign. Videos must have captions. The information, doctors have to adapt and be able to give clear information to people with disabilities. You must be able to access a medical place, right? For how many decades did people have to be seen in a storeroom in a doctor's office or in a really, limited situation because they didn't have accessible accessible offices? Websites for schools and hospitals must work for people who are blind and low vision. Someone can't refuse to help someone that's a doctor or a hospital because they have a disability, and it's just too much to interpret, too much work. And finally, there must be tools and machines for wheelchair users. That includes machines that check for cancer. So these are just some examples I wanted to share with you. And again, I'm going to leave it there because I know you have a big agenda. I just want to say we strongly support this resolution and hope that the council will adopt it tonight. And thank you for taking it on.
Counselor?
Thank you, Madam President, through you. And as mentioned, this was brought forth by the Somerville Persons with Disability Commission. So with that, I wanted to bring a subject matter expert, such as Mr. Sarkisian, and I also wanted to hear from our Persons with Disability Commission this evening. So with that, I'd like to ask that we sponsor Harriet Ranvig, who should also be online, to speak on this important item as well.
Harriet, welcome. Can you unmute yourself? Harriet, we can't hear you. Can you unmute on your end?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Sorry, my screen reader program, another wonderful accommodation. My name is Harriet Ranvig. I live at 5 Leicester Terrace, and I deeply appreciate City Council taking this on. And thank you, Madam President. And thank you, Madam Clerk, and everyone who is listening or actually in the City Hall. I'll also be brief. I'm 78 years old. I've been blind since I was 14. And I'm a passionate advocate. One thing that Leo didn't happen to mention is people with disabilities have worked individually and in small groups really, really hard. Veterans after Vietnam War were a big part of that. And the far-reaching issue of 504 is beyond comprehension. And this is just a tiny little story. In order to embarrass and shame Bush Sr., there is a photograph, anyone can look it up, of 300 people crawling, if they could get out of their wheelchairs, up the Capitol steps. So what we forget is that one out of every 5, if you're conservative, people have a mental or physical disability. And then others have temporary disabilities, like people can get the ride if they got a broken leg and they got to get to work or move around, you know? So, and I also want to join in about the 17 state lawsuit. Since I heard about it on February 19th, I've been campaigning with people to call the AGs outside of these 17 countries to file an amicus brief to say this is completely counter to everything that the integrity and rights of millions of people, and see what they can do about that. But meanwhile, I'm so proud of Somerville for standing up for this. And it's because my partner read through the entire lawsuit, and it was only on page 37 that one found out, oh, we're going to destroy trans rights. Oh, let's just go ahead and wipe out disability rights. Now, mind you, that does include huge amount of medical stuff. And if they, you know, and it goes on and on. And also, independent living. For the first time in history, maybe, we were granted the possibility of living independently. And so there's a whole network of independent living centers. Do we have enough? No. Do we have enough even in the disability and Medicaid, Medicare? Not entirely, but to wipe that out is to really deny a citizen their complete rights. So thank you. I think that is as best I could describe it. But I myself have been arrested in Washington, D.C. for civil rights disobedience with National Adapt. So I just want everyone to know this is, if you think you're not disabled, you will be eventually. We like to say disability is a club that doesn't discriminate. Thank you very much.
Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. And before we hear if any colleagues want to speak on this, I just want to reiterate that, you know, the door was open on this on the basis of the attack that's happening amongst gender, so in this case, gender dysphoria, which is a recognized under the Disability Act. And so when you have students who are struggling, they can have accommodations it isn't so hard trying to navigate, you know, the regular school environment in a way that isn't sensitive to the needs of a disability that is recognized. And I just want to say one thing from this article, that the irony of this that's happening under this president. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton sued the Biden administration in September 2024, saying that it was abusing executive action to sidestep the law. I mean, if I've ever heard an ironic term here with abusing executive action, I mean, it's just laughable to hear that now when they're essentially trying to peel back disability rights that have been hard fought for. So I want to thank all of you for listening.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. I want to thank Councillor Klingon for approaching me about bringing this forward, and for the speakers tonight for outlining why this is such an important thing to defend, and also why this attack on it is just so terrible. You know, we heard the Rehabilitation Act in 1973, it gave civil rights to folks with disabilities. It was landmark, and it was the foundation also for the ADA 2 decades later. My family knows the importance of it. My aunt was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in the 1960s. When she was divorced in the early 70s, she had to move back in with her parents with 2 young kids. She was in a wheelchair. It was impossible to find a home for her at the time. After the Rehabilitation Act in 1973 and the accommodations that came from that, she was then able to find a place of her own, live by herself, with the pride that came in that, and the difference in her life that made. So yeah, the AGs of these states that are suing they should be ashamed of themselves. They're lying to the public about this. They're saying, oh, this is narrowly about, about the gender dysphoria issue. No, it's right there in the filing. If you read the filing, it's right there. They're going after the whole thing, and they need to be shamed about this. Thanks.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, first, thanks to my colleague in Ward 4, as well as my colleague at large for their comments, and to the speakers for really laying out why this is such an important issue. As some of you know, over the last couple months, I've been, as a side gig, I've been working as an empowerment self-defense coach with Impact Boston. And one of the things I've been doing for particularly the last 7 weeks is teaching a class in Dorchester at Albert Holland to a class of folks who have intellectual disabilities. And the importance of this section to making sure that those folks still have access to education, which is critical to their personal growth, but also to their safety, it really can't be overestimated. Because if we stripped our country of a provision like this, we would, for many districts across the country and in the Commonwealth, unfortunately, especially if federal funds from education are stripped away, districts would create an entirely segregated system for folks with disabilities, particularly those that would need physical accommodations or intellectual accommodations due to the costs of those programs. And if that were to happen, there would be so many people who would not be able to get the supports necessary to even engage in social situations, to recognize threats to themselves, which is incredibly unfortunate because people with disabilities, particularly those with intellectual disabilities, are far more likely to be the victims of crime, to face state-sanctioned violence, and to experience sexual violence. And without the bare minimum protections that we have in place, that statistic would only grow more dire. So again, just thank you for bringing light to this issue, because as I was discussing with someone literally earlier today, we already live in a society where people with disabilities are shoved to one corner in so many aspects of life, and removing these protections would just totally enshrine that into our society structurally.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to sign on and just add a couple quick cents here on this, because I see what the President and what other Attorney Generals are doing is they're targeting transgender community in the hopes of singling them out to get a much broader agenda accomplished. And so they're targeting one group, but in reality, this applies to so many people. And what I see on the federal government level is they are revoking reasonable accommodations for people who have already had them, and in the attempt to force them back into the office, even though they've been productive members of the federal government for a long time. So I'm just saying this for the people who may think that this doesn't apply to you. It will probably someday apply to you, because everyone grows old, everybody has physical and mental limitations, and just because it's not affecting you right now doesn't mean it won't in the future.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank you for bringing this forward, and good Councilor at large. Again, this is something that we've heard multiple times. If you are a senior or you're a person with disability, you're almost invisible in a society like this, which is like really, a sad thing. And like one of the speakers, we all know, says that it's a club that doesn't, discriminate. So the more we think about this, the more we know that it's going to come. It's just a matter of time. So thank you.
Councilor Said.
Through you, Madam President. First, I'm grateful to my colleagues for putting this resolution forward, and to the speakers for reminding us of this important issue. As a former educator who worked for almost a decade in the public school system, 8 of those years at Somerville High School. Seeing the disability rights being taken away is absolutely outrageous. I had many students with 504 plan, and implementing those individual plan is crucial to the students' success in school. I myself had an accommodation with the district as I have severe hearing loss, and I was able to do my job every day and serve all my students. So again, thank you for the resolution, colleagues.
Okay, this item is approved. Councilor Scott would like to sign on to this one as well. Okay, next item.
The next item is going to be item 4.5, a resolution by Councilors Mba, Sait, McLaughlin, Ewan-Campen, Wilson, Burnley, and Davis in support of immigrant rights legislation, including the Safe Communities Act and the Immigrant Legal Defense Act.
Madam Clerk, please sign me on to this as well. Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank my colleagues, Councilor Said and Councilor McLaughlin, for working with me on this resolution. I think that it's in our commitment to building a just and equitable society, the city of Somerville stands in solidarity with our immigrant communities, because immigrants are an integral to the cultural and economic fabric of our city. And it is our duty to ensure that all residents feel safe, supported, and treated with dignity. So I want to also thank the original drafter of this resolution, the Councilor Benjamin Weber in Boston and President Ruthie Lejeune, with whom I had the pleasure of speaking with, a few times while working on our resolution. I also want to thank also our state legislators, because people need to be appreciated when they take this initiative, like Senator Jamie Edridge, Reps Priscilla Souza, Manny Cruz, Senator Adam Gomez, Reps David Rogers, Frank Moran, for leading these efforts to protect immigrant rights. With this resolution, we reaffirm Somerville's commitment to justice, inclusion, and the fundamental rights, of all who call our city home. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to Maroni Minta from Mira, who also approached us with this idea and for joining us remotely, and also to our own very legislative analyst, Brandon Salisbury, for the substantive edits that he made to this resolution to monitor, so that we can all monitor and track it, at the State House. So thank you, Brandon. And at this point, I would like to, sponsor Maroni Minta, to speak on the resolution, who will be joining us remotely.
Maroni.
Great. Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Wilfer, and thank you, all of you who I have spoken with, and to this entire body for hosting and willing to listen to me, but also taking on this resolution. My name is Maroni Mentor. I am the political director at MIRA, and I am also a proud immigrant from Gabon, Africa, very small country that a lot of people have not heard of. And I'm here to talk about Protecting Our Immigrant Communities campaign. And the Protecting Our Immigrant Communities campaign is built in one core belief, and that is the idea that all individuals, regardless of immigration status, deserve dignity, safety, and equal protection under the law. And we believe that Massachusetts has and must lead in defending immigrant rights, challenging discrimination, and ensuring that no one lives in fear of deportation or exploitation. So today, I'd like to highlight two key legislative priorities that will help us achieve these goals. One is the Safe Communities Act. And the Safe Communities Act is a bill that would protect immigrants from unjust enforcement. And what this bill will do is it will ensure that immigrants can seek help, report crimes, and access justice without fear of deportation. So some of the key provisions in this bill are no unwarranted immigration inquiries. So basically, this bill would prevent police and court from asking about someone's immigration status, so immigrants can safely report crimes and seek justice. The second provision is protecting from ICE interrogation. And so this provision requires that law enforcement obtain an informed written consent before ICE can question someone in custody. And this will also ensure a due process. And the third provision is really giving access to justice, right? So this provision will limit ICE interference and allowing immigrants to attend court hearings and access legal protection without fearing arrest. And the last provision is ending 287G agreement. So this will stop local law enforcement from acting as federal immigration agents. I should say that you probably have heard of the Trust Act, and this is something that the city of Boston has actually instituted. And so this part will do that, just that at the statewide level. So that's the Safe Communities Act. And then the second bill is the Immigrant Legal Defense Act. And this is, as we know it, immigrants and deportation proceedings do not have the right to a public defender. And so this bill aims at changing that, right? And so legal representation matters when it comes to deportation proceeding. And we know that detained immigrants with an attorney are 10 times more likely to win their cases than those without. And so this bill, what it does, it would create a public and private funded program to provide free legal representation for low-income immigrants. And the funding will be managed by a single coordinator, the Office of a Refugee, of the Immigrant and Refugee, and to ensure that there is efficiency and fairness. And lastly, this is also about widening access to justice, right? So these legal funds will, as I mentioned, support, also go to nonprofit and private attorneys to ensure that all immigrants have a fair shot at fighting deportation. In closing, I just want to say that immigrants are, as Wilfred said, are a very essential part of our communities. And we deserve the right to seek justice, to live without fear, and have a fair legal representation. And with what's happening right now across the country, it is really critical upon states to take leadership. And we believe that passing these two bills, Massachusetts will send a strong message to the rest of the nation. So to this body, by you passing this resolution, it will send a strong message to our state leader and policymakers that this is something that town like Somerville really want to see happen. And lastly, I also want to thank your legislators who are champion, but we still need you to talk with them so they can engage with their colleague to be able to support this. So thank you all so much. I hope that you will vote and vote unanimously to move this resolution forward. Thank you, and we look forward to working with you.
Councilor Mbaugh.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, and thank you to Maroni. I will yield to my colleagues if they have anything to add, to Councilor McLaughlin and Councilor Said before I conclude.
Councilor Said.
Thank you, through you, Madam President. First, I want to thank my colleagues for working together on this resolution. I would like to thank Maroni for speaking tonight, and especially for his important work right now with Mira. As a first-generation immigrant, this past Saturday was very moved when I saw the big turnout at the immigrant Welcome Here rally in East Somerville. It was freezing cold, and neighbors were there for hours, supporting each other, talking to each other, and being there for each other. So that was very moving. Thank you to all the organizers for doing that. I am also very pleased to learn that our state delegation is in support of these two acts. I've said this back in November, but I would like to say it again today. And this is happening in our community, and this is what I saw as an educator at Somerville High School from 2017 to 2019. So as you all know, I was a teacher at Somerville High School for 7 years. I worked mostly with immigrant families, and I have seen how attacks on immigrants have shaken our community. They tore apart families, they separated children from their parents. I watched my students fall behind on schoolwork as they transitioned to taking bigger roles in their families by becoming the primary providers, by being the ones seeking legal services, being the interpreters, delivering the bad news to their parents. And I am no longer in the classroom, but I know all these things are happening. I know no resolution or act will make the current fear and the uncertainty go away. But as a council, this is us using our power to keep our community safe. And this act, if passed, will help all immigrants in Massachusetts feel safe. These two acts are really important, as Maroni was saying. They will help protect the constitutional rights of our immigrants, and they will help create a program to provide no-cost immigration legal defense to immigrants in Massachusetts who are at imminent risk of deportation. So again, thank you, colleagues.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to my colleagues for including me in this. I know it's deeply personal to both of my colleagues who just spoke. It's personal to me as well on a different level as someone who grew up in a sanctuary city and understand what it is and what it is not. And I know we're lucky to live in a city that this is, I'm sure this will pass, and our state representatives will support it, and hopefully it'll pass on the state level. It seems like there's real momentum for this. But I know there's a lot of people who don't support it, some in Somerville, some in Massachusetts, a lot of people across the country. And we've gotten to a point where we can't just ignore it and shame it and disregard any concerns that people might have around something like this. So I want to speak to that issue and tell a quick story about why this should be important to you, even if you think that it's not, it doesn't apply to you or it's something that you don't support. First of all, money. We have to pay to hold people. Either the city or the state will have to pay money in order to do the federal government's job. So that alone, if people are concerned about their tax dollars, they should think about that. But I do want to tell a quick story about a time I was living on Broadway in one of the 4-decker apartments, one of the only 4-decker apartments in the city. I'm sure some of you know it. It has now fortunately become affordable housing units. But I lived on the 2nd floor. My brother lived on the 1st floor. I had friends who lived on the 3rd floor. But then on the 4th floor, there was a family of immigrants who lived up there. And one day, their house was robbed. And probably by somebody who knew them, who knew their documentation status, knew that they would have cash hidden somewhere, and took advantage of their vulnerability. And they called the police, and the police came, talked to me, talked to other people. And that was it's just one of those examples where I want people to call the police. I want them to call 911. I want them to reach out and call 311 when they have constituent issues. Because if anybody sees a pothole in the street and they call 311 and that pothole gets filled, I no longer have to worry about that pothole. And in this case, we have people who, if they felt afraid to call the police or call 911 when their rights were violated, I'm living 2 floors down from them. So maybe if they don't call the cops and people know that they can repeatedly harass people, and we know this is the case where vulnerable immigrants are targeted by people sometimes from their home country, and know that they won't go to the police, they're going to continue taking advantage of them. And that makes my safety at risk. So I want that person to call the cops, because that person who decided to rob someone, they could turn around and say, maybe I'll rob this house. It's so easy, might as well. And that's what this is about to me. This is about allowing people to feel like they are protected in this community if they are being threatened. And I do want to give a shout out to Mayor Wu, who did an amazing job down in Washington, D.C., testifying about all this. There's things that I wish she said that they probably wouldn't let her say because they were too busy shouting her down. But when they asked, do you think it's right for people to get murdered and raped and all these things, and she said no, and they were just nailing her on this. I just wish she had the opportunity to say, murder is still illegal in sanctuary cities. Rape is still illegal in sanctuary cities. All these laws still apply to people, and if you are arrested for those crimes, you will be held for those crimes. We're just not going to take the time to do the federal government's job and detain people for whatever period that they think, to deputize our police and our state troopers to do their job. That is not our responsibility, and it is not their responsibility to fill out traffic tickets and to do the basic work that our police and public safety people do here. So that's why it's very important to me, and I will also add, too, that this does have a lot of support. This is endorsed by the Massachusetts Major City Chiefs Association and the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association have signed on to this, because they also know that crime flourishes when people cannot communicate, when they can't call the police and ask for help. So even the police are on board with this because they know that it makes their jobs easier and it makes us all safer. So thank you everyone for including me, and I do hope that this passes on the state level and sends a message nationally.
Councilor Baugh.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to my colleagues, Councilor McLaughlin and Councilor Said, for that input. I think I just want to wrap up by saying, as an immigrant, from Cameroon, I feel incredibly humbled to be supported by members of my community to be serving on this body, and also, to be supported by members of this body. I just want to say thank you. It's quite humbling that, this city is very unique to me. I mean, I came to this country in less than 10 years. I served 2 terms on the council, ran for mayor. It's nowhere I can imagine that. So I will ask that a copy of this resolution to be sent to our state delegation and to the governor's office as written. Thank you.
Councilors Strezzo, Klingon, and Scott would like to sign on. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, this item is approved. And did you note that those copies to be sent, Madam Clerk? Okay, great. Next item.
The next item will be item 10.6, in order by Councilors Pineda Neufeld and Ewan Campen, that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management discuss with this council what strategies and resources are being utilized to bring Somerville's Tannery Brook combined sewer overflow into compliance with the current and future long-term CSO control plans.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have members of Save the Alewife Brook here tonight to share a little bit more about what this means. So before I pass it over to them, Councilor Ewan Campen, I know you met with them as well. Anything you want to add before we pass this over?
Certainly, Madam President. I think all of us kind of understand that when there's a big storm, sewage goes into the rivers around here, the Charles, the Mystic, the Alewife Brook. I hope that what everyone is able to do tonight when we hear from this really wonderful community group is to just get a deeper understanding of what that means. I think a lot of attention in our infrastructure work has gone into the Charles, into the Mystic, and the Alewife Brook has been sort of overlooked by a lot of people, and I certainly was not quite aware of just the experience people who live near there, sewage in their basements, the experience people, walking on nearby paths and parks, raw sewage. And this is not an unknown problem, right? Like the city, the state are well aware, and plans are underway to try to address this in the long term. I know that myself and other colleagues have met with Director Raish and other members of our staff, and this is obviously not anything that they are unaware of. They're very aware of it, and I think all of us would benefit from a kind of public conversation about what it is really going to take to actually make a dent in this issue. So, Madam President, thank you for bringing this forward, and I look forward to hearing from the Save the Alewife Brook Coalition.
Great, and colleagues, of course, Director Raish is not with us tonight, so my plan is to send this to, hopefully, Finance Committee, given the budgetary implications of what we're about to hear, for further discussion, and Director Raish will be there to respond and answer more questions directed at him. So with that, I'm going to introduce Andy Visser, a Somerville resident and member of Save the Alewife Brook. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Andy Visser, and I live in Somerville and support Save the Alewife Brook. And I would just like to sponsor and introduce Kristen, David, and Jean.
Great, welcome. And we do have slides, Madam Clerk, if we can grab those up too. Yes, feel free to introduce yourselves, and then we'll get the slides up.
Madam President and members of the council, good evening. My name is Kristen Anderson. I live at 12 Upland Road West in Arlington, and I'm here tonight with fellow Arlington residents and Alewife Brook abutter David Stoff and Jean Benson. Thank you, Madam President, for giving us the opportunity to present here tonight. And also to Councilor Ewan Campen and to Councilor Wilson for meeting with us separately. Madam President, may I present now to Council?
Sure.
Thank you. I am here today because Alewife Brook flooded into my home multiple times. Untreated sewage floodwater came into my house and into my neighbors' homes right through the back door. My neighbors and I had no idea what was in that water. We were trying to save our belongings when exposed to sewage in the floodwater, and we got sick. I'm talking gross digestive illness, painful cramps, and bloody diarrhea. This is an environmental justice neighborhood, and it is downstream of Somerville's Tannery Brook CSO. Mr. Stoff, Mr. Benson, and I are founders of Save the Alewife Brook. Save the Alewife Brook is a growing grassroots environmental group. We currently have several thousand supporters in Cambridge, Somerville, Arlington, Belmont, Medford, and beyond. Since 2023, Save the Alewife Brook has been meeting every month with the Mystic River Watershed Association and Charles River Watershed Association. Next slide, please. The Alewife Brook is in an area that floods. That floodwater contains hazardous sewage from the sewer system in Cambridge and Somerville. Next slide. In 2023, the brook flooded over its bank 5 times, sending untreated sewage floodwater into the Alewife Greenway path on DCR parkland. We saw children riding bikes through untreated sewage floodwater. We saw joggers running through it, and we saw parents pushing baby strollers through untreated sewage floodwater. The situation is horrifying. The Alewife path is a heavily trafficked multi-use path that links Somerville, Arlington, and Cambridge residents to the Alewife Red Line T-Stop and Minuteman Bikeway. A lot of Somerville residents use this path. In 2023, 29 million gallons of untreated sewage pollution was dumped into Alewife Brook, and in 2021, 51 million gallons. Next slide, please. Here's a map of the Alewife CSO outfalls. All CSOs here are untreated. This is a densely populated area with 5,000 people living in the Alewife's 100-year floodplain. There are multiple environmental justice neighborhoods along the brook. Next slide, please. Somerville has 2 CSO outfalls. Somerville's Mystic River CSO, Psalm 007A, discharges treated sewage. Treatment neutralizes bacteria. Psalm 001A is the Tannery Brook CSO. It discharges untreated sewage into Alewife Brook. The Alewife Brook CSOs are far more hazardous because they are untreated sewage. And it is important for you to know that this health risk impacts Somerville residents. Many Somerville residents use the Alewife Greenway path, and Alewife Brook flows into Mystic River. So Alewife Brook sewage pollution impacts the use of the Mystic River. We heard from a Somerville parent who has a child at the West Somerville School. They said that during a school canoe trip in the Mystic River, the children were exposed to the sewage in the water and got sick. The next few slides show ongoing neglect. Toilet paper hangs from the tree branches in front of Somerville's Tannery Brook CSO. Nass DEP has taken action to address this violation of so-called floatables control. This CSO is one of the Dirty Six sewer overflows that are not in compliance with the Boston Harbor cleanup court case. It discharges more sewage than is permitted by the court. Next slide, please. The Tannery Brook CSO, SOM 001A, is only authorized to discharge up to 1.67 million gallons of sewage pollution in an average or typical year. Next slide, please. This CSO discharged 7 million gallons of sewage pollution in 2023. Next slide, please. And 18 million gallons in 2021. This is a sign that things are getting worse, and this is because of neglect. Next slide, please. What has the city done to reduce CSOs in Alewife Brook? We know that much work has been done elsewhere in the city, but we are not seeing improvement in conditions at Alewife Brook. Next slide, please. Mass DEP agrees that improvements must be made, and they've included a bunch of awesome new requirements in their 2024 water quality variance. Next slide, please. We are very happy to report, though, that there exists now an opportunity to make improvements. There is a regulatory requirement for improvements through the updated long-term CSO control plan, which is in the planning stage. The engineers in Somerville are looking at options. Next slide, please. This is a proposed Alewife plan. Next slide, please. This is another Alewife proposal. Next slide, please. This is a Mystic River plan. Next slide, please. We are now waiting to hear back from EPA about the results of the financial capability assessment. This report will determine the required spending by the city. Next slide, please. The Tannery Brook CSO presents serious community health risks. There are documented cases of folks getting sick from forced exposure to sewage in the floodwater. The CSO has been badly neglected for many decades. We ask Somerville to focus their EPA-required spending on projects to improve Alewife Brook. And if there is no EPA tomorrow, Somerville still has the power to make the brook safe. Please. Thank you. We appreciate your interest. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, not a question, but an advertisement for an upcoming related event that we want to encourage Somerville residents to turn out for. That is the Thursday, April 3rd listening session that's being held about this. It's an opportunity for the public to make their voices heard. So I'll be encouraging all constituents that I come in contact with about this, and including in newsletters, and I hope colleagues do the same. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Scherzer would like to sign on to this, and Councilor Mbaugh as well, and the whole council would like to sign on to this. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We'll send this to Finance, and I'll be in touch to let you know when that is, so we can continue the conversation in committee.
Thanks again. We really, really appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is going to be two items taken up together. Item 10.23, a request of the mayor, requesting the appropriation of $1,073,189 from the Salary and Wage Stabilization Fund to various departmental other lump sum payments accounts to fund the retrospective portion of a collective bargaining settlement with the Somerville Municipal Employees Union, Unit B. And item 10.24, a request of the mayor, requesting the appropriation of $1,810,905 from the Salary Contingency account to various departmental personal services accounts to fund fiscal year 2025 retroactive payments related to a collective bargaining settlement with the Somerville Municipal Employees Union, Unit B.
Colleagues, we're being asked to consider these for immediate consideration tonight. We might have Labor Council Sergo here with us to answer questions. No? One moment. Why don't we go to questions first? Councilor Scott.
Madam President, can we just move for approval on this?
Sure thing.
All right, thank you.
Sure thing. Councillor Klingon.
Yeah, Madam President, I second that. There's SMU members just waiting for this to go down, so waiting on pins and needles here.
Okay. Do we need a roll call on this, Madam Clerk? Okay, let's take these items up, please. For
So
roll
on items 25-0514 and 25-0513, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
A hearty aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, those items are approved.
Wonderful. Madam Clerk, next item.
The next item is going to be item 7.1, which is a request of the mayor. Let me get back there. It is, I'll skip that page. It's a request of the mayor requesting that this council convene an executive session with the city solicitor and lawyers for civil rights to discuss legal services in connection with any executive order issued by the Trump administration regarding sanctuary cities.
I move us to executive session. Do we need a roll call on that?
Indeed.
Let's take it.
On the motion, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, the motion is approved and the council will enter executive session.
Welcome back, colleagues. Do we need to? Okay. No votes were taken in executive session other than the vote to adjourn. Madam Clerk, can we take a roll to establish quorum?
Yes, Madam President, this is roll call. Councilor Mba.
Present.
Councilor Wilson.
Present.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Present.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yep.
Councilor Burnley.
Present.
Councilor Said.
Here.
Councilor Strezzo.
Here.
Councilor Klingon.
Present.
Councilor Davis.
Here.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Here.
With all councilors present, we have a quorum.
Great. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
That is going to return us to the regular order of business and item 4.1, an order by Councilor Burnley that the city clerk draft a notice of building sale ordinance as recommended by the Residential Displacement Task Force to require landlords inform tenants of an intent to sell when they list a home on the multiple listing service or other real estate sales platforms.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, this was a recommendation that was in our recent residential displacement task force. Thank you to, I believe, Councilor Ewan-Campen, who served on that task force as a representative of the council. You know, I certainly believe that as the city makes these plans and takes the time of our residents to help formulate them, we need to move with efficiency to actually carry out what's in the best interest of our residents. And this is one small example of that. I've certainly, as a renter, been in the position where I've been seeing my rent rise, been worried about how long I would be able to afford it, only to see the building I live in on Zillow for sale, and to realize that my landlord was looking to sell the building that I was currently living in. This is something that causes quite a bit of instability, both emotionally and fiscally for our residents. And just as a matter of practice and decency, I think we should be urging our property owners who do have tenants to give them as much notice as possible when their building is up for sale, rather than going to the private market and saying, we're going to bid away someone's home that they do live in without their notice. We should actually give our residents as much time to find accommodations and support as possible, including as I know many councilors around this horseshoe believe in, time to potentially find the funds and crowdsource the funds to be able to purchase a building that they live in, if at all possible. So I know that this work is happening currently within the city. And so I'm not going to ask for this to be sent to committee. I'm going to ask for this to just be approved. But just want to note again, we need transformative change on this issue. This ordinance is not transformative change, but I certainly am going to remain committed to fighting for every single inch that we can get in order to rebalance the scales of our relations with tenants and to ensure that they have as much stability as possible. So with that, I'd ask for this order to be approved.
Okay, this item is approved. Next item.
Item 4.2 is a resolution by Councilors Wilson and Klingon declaring the month of March 2025 as National Social Work Month.
Madam Clerk, we are going to lay this on the table for the next meeting. Next item.
Item 4.3 is an order by Councilor Mba that the Director of Engineering and Director of Mobility install a traffic signal light at the end of Woods Avenue and Alewife Brook Parkway.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. If you've been on this council long enough, I've been advocating for a crosswalk, at the end of Woods Ave. Woods Ave is perpendicular to Alewife Brook Parkway, and it's never happened. I ran on that almost 8 years ago, and we actually, the state rep, Rep Babat said we had earmarked $100,000 from this year to actually install that, but nothing much has happened. Lieutenant Ryle contacted me recently and said, and alternatively is that we can have a traffic light at that intersection, because it's a pretty dangerous intersection, if you look at it when it's busy, when they're playing at Dearborn, it's really the residents, pedestrians, and drivers alike have expressed their frustration and concern about the difficulty in safely crossing and navigating this area. So, especially during peak hours when the kids are playing, and without that traffic signal, this intersection remains a hazard to our community, increasing the risk of accident, and we gotta prevent that. So there's already a process in place. I'm not gonna be advocating for a crosswalk anymore. At least a traffic signal is something that I think that we can actually pursue, because we already have all the stakeholders and the conversation is ongoing, and I want this to be formal. So I want to send this to traffic and parking, and we can pick up the conversation from there. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll send this to traffic and parking. As the ward councillor, I've been in touch with the Director of Mobility around this. I'd be happy to update you. Maybe for efficiency's sake, next time just check in with the ward councillor before submitting an item in their ward, because I can certainly give you an update offline around this, but happy to have this conversation in committee. We'll send this to traffic and parking. Next item.
Item 4.4 is an order by Councilor Mba that the Commissioner of Public Works trim the trees in front of 18 and 20 Granite Street as their branches are creating hazard to the abutting house.
Councilor Mba.
Approved.
Okay, this item is approved. Next item.
Item 4.6 is an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Director of Human Resources, Director of Parking, Director of Mobility, and Chief of Police respond to the recent incidents of 4 children being hit by cars in the past few months on their paths to school.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes, and for emphasis, I would like to repeat that line. If we can talk again about so that these departments respond to the recent incidents of 4 children being hit by cars in the past few months on their paths to school. And if that bothers anyone, let's have some action steps to not let that happen again. Can we please send this to Equity?
Sure. That item is approved and sent to Equity.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item 4.7 is an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Chief of Police report on the current number of regularly staffed crossing guards throughout the city and the total number of crossing guard positions currently available.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you, Madam President. The last time I remember discussing this in committee, when I checked in on it, I believe we were close to less than 40 crossing guards of the necessary, I believe, 88. So with that, let's see what our numbers are, and if there have been any action and success. With recruitment, what I do believe is that the intersection of Highland and Vinyl has a potential crossing guard coming. Excited about that, but that is what I've heard, haven't seen it, and don't know for sure if that's true. Can we send this to Equity as well?
Councilor Mba would like to sign on. This item is approved and sent to Equity.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item 4.8 is an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Director of Parks and Recreation report on the process by which Ginny Smithers pool patrons are promptly notified of pool cancellations or schedule changes, including any modifications that could be made to that process in light of the March 2025 temporary pool closure.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. Can you please send this to the School Buildings Committee?
Yep. We'll send that to the School Buildings, Facilities, and Maintenance Committee.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item 4.9 is an order by Councilor Strezzo that the Director of Parks and Recreation report on the stock and condition of previously installed playground communication boards that assist nonverbal children in playtime.
Councilor Strezzo.
Thank you. One of my very first successes in my first term as a counselor, and what I'm very, very proud of is working with a Somerville parent and wonderful, fierce advocate in the community, and a pretty badass firefighter too, to put up communication boards throughout the playgrounds. And what these communication boards are for nonverbal children, say they're autistic or nonverbal, or they cannot use the words to express what they're feeling, or they just aren't there yet. They can point to pictures on this board that are on the playgrounds to express what they need. If they want to, if they're cold, or if they want to leave, or if they want to go on the slide. All these pictures are there without a single word present. And we have them still installed, but I have noticed that a couple of them have been damaged, so let's find out what's going on with them, if there are plans for to increase them in the community, and also what the replacement status is. Can we send this, please, to Equity?
Sure. This
Thank
item's
you.
approved and sent to Equity. Next item.
Item 4.10 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Chief of Police prioritize Otis Street for traffic enforcement during school drop-off and pickup times.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. My original order asked for the Director of Traffic and Parking, but I think both would be appropriate for this. There's a golden rule living in a city in Massachusetts that everyone should know. Not everyone seems to know this when they come into the city. Never, under any circumstances ever, park in front of someone's driveway. Wars have been started for less, and I see it happening on a regular basis. A lot of problems with drop-off and pickup on the street in particular. Just want to make sure basic traffic laws are being enforced during school drop-off pickup times and make sure everybody respects each other's neighbors. Traffic and parking, please.
Okay, Councilor Wilson would like to sign on. This item is approved and sent to Traffic and Parking. Next item.
Item 4.11 is an order by Councilor McLaughlin that the Director of Parking update the Ward 1 City Councilor on the recently installed signs prohibiting parking during snow emergencies on Otis Street.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Traffic and parking, please.
Item is approved and sent to Traffic and Parking. Next item.
Item 4.12 is a resolution by Councilor McLaughlin that the administration update this council on the status of the $528,218 received from the National Opioid Settlement Fund to combat drug addiction, and if any plans to utilize said funds.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. I think we've asked this several times over the years, what's going on with this money. And this is not a problem unique to Somerville. Many cities in Massachusetts are not using the funds from the opioid settlement fund, which is coming from the people who caused the opioid epidemic to begin with, the pharmaceutical companies. This money, almost $500,000, is waited to be used for several years. And I came across this article that reminded me about this with Senator John Vellis from Westfield. I just want to read a couple things that he's saying about this as a person in recovery. He says this, get this money out the door, people are dying. I do not understand why municipalities are slow rolling this the way that they are. And he says, we know the gold standard, get Narcan out there, focus on harm reduction, focus on prevention. We're getting dangerously close to a place where I would say that if the money isn't being used, maybe we should set deadlines. So a lot of cities are doing this. I know the city of Somerville, when we've asked in the past, what's going on with this money, is going towards the safe consumption site. I think at this point, that's not happening. I don't think it's going to happen. If it was ever going to happen, it's not happening now. And we have to just acknowledge that, but acknowledge that there are many other things we can do to prevent overdoses and to help people, things that are within the wheelhouse right now that are legally allowed, that we don't need to ask anyone for permission to do. So I think it's time to start using this money. And just to point out, in 2023, in the year that we waited to make this decision, 14 people in Somerville died of overdoses. We have money. It doesn't have to be the magic bullet to address this issue, but we should be using this money as soon as possible. So I'd like this to go to Public Health and Safety and have a conversation about getting this money to a good purpose as soon as possible.
We have Councilor Scott first, and Councilor Wilson, and Councilor Burnley.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to my colleague from Ward 1 for bringing this up. This is an enormous problem across the state. I mean, in FY23 and FY24, of the 336 participating municipalities, $91 million was distributed to be used for opioid remediation funds, right? Less than $7 million of that 91 was actually put into play. So I'm sure everybody is aware of the work that I did with the Bureau of Substance and Addiction Services. This is, it's imperative that we deploy these funds and to deploy them in ways that are going to be impactful. I would be embarrassed to see this turn into a series of posters on the sides of our big belly trash cans when there are organizations within the city that can absolutely be doing more outreach work more community-centered, peer-centered work in terms of harm reduction right now. So I applaud this item and add my voice to the urgency. Would like to be able to co-sponsor it as well, ma'am. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. Yeah, I agree the outlook is pretty bleak, at least for the next 3.9 years in terms of an overdose prevention center. I would love to see us do something with these funds and hopefully additional funds in the meantime. We've talked about the idea of what about the wraparound services, right, that we're supposed to be part of this. What about trying to stand that up at this point? And I'll just say from a harm reduction standpoint, one thing that I just want to put out there to the public, Never Use Alone is a phone number that you can call if you're going to use, 877-696-1996. Someone will stay with you on the phone, and if you become unresponsive, they will notify emergency response personnel. For these funds, potentially, there's also the Brave mobile app. They've stopped the public-facing part of that, but they are entering into contracts with municipalities. This is something we could do. It operates much in the same way. Someone's there. If you're going to use, if you go unresponsive, they will then alert the authorities. You know, not as good as having someone there in person, but they could save lives. So I just want to name those as options and resources.
Thank you. We have Councillor Burnley and then Councillor Mba.
All right. Before my question, through the chair, a clarifying question for Councillor McLaughlin. Was this order in relative to the Massachusetts Municipal Opioid Abatement Funds, or just like more broadly all funds that we've received related to like an opioid lawsuit?
Councilor McLaughlin.
Through the chair, to the councilor, this is specifically about the money from the National Opioid Settlement, $528,000 that the city has currently. So this is from a database of all funds across the state. Each city was allocated these funds. So this is about a specific fund, but yes, I'm interested in any and all money that we've gotten from opioid settlements and what's going on with that.
Councilor Burnley.
All right, thank you. Just want to clarify that. Last year, through the chair, last year I brought forward an item specifically about the Massachusetts Municipal Opioid Abatement payments that we also receive as part of these lawsuits. Every municipality in this Commonwealth receives them. At the time, which was, you know, when I put it forward, March 12th, exactly 1 year and 1 day ago, we had exactly $244,891.15 in those abatement funds, and I was asking, what are we doing with this? Well, these are funds that we'd had for years, or at least over a year. And as far as I'm aware, we hadn't even taken the procedural action of moving it into the correct stabilization fund, which I still don't believe we've done. But as an aside, the update that we received at the time was that the money from those funds were being partially used to talk with folks who do use, to get a better sense of how best we could target those funds, make sure that they are being used for the right things and getting to the right people. Those funds, at least, were not at all, from the discussion we had, related to an overdose prevention center. But I remain, and I co-signed what the councilor from Ward 1 said, I remain consistent in pushing us to move more quickly to use these funds, because we do have hundreds of thousands of dollars, which will not solve the opioid crisis, but can be used to save lives. And as far as I'm aware, overdoses remain the primary cause of preventable death in Somerville. So it's something we continue to need to take more action on.
Councilor Mba.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to co-sign it. I think the fundamental question here is what this money is supposed to be used for under the terms of the court settlement. That's every, funds have like terms and conditions. So I will really be interested in knowing everything that is applied to that settlement.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, well, this item's approved and sent to Public Health, Public Safety. Next item.
Item 4.13 is an order by Councilor Klingon that the Commissioner of Public Works install a large "No Dogs Allowed" sign on the Thurston Street entrance gate of the Winter Hill Soccer Field.
Councilor Klingon. Okay, this item is approved. Next item.
Item 4.15 is a communication by Councilor Klingon conveying budget priorities and requests for fiscal year 2026.
This item is placed on file with a copy to finance. Next item.
Item 4.16 is an order by Councilor Said that the Commissioner of Public Works remove the unused switch box on the sidewalk at 533 to 535 Medford Street.
Councilor Said.
Madam President, I would like to send this to Public Utilities and Public Works. I guess we can go to the next item. If you could read item 417, 418, and 419, as they're all going to the same committee.
Okay, shoot. Do you want to waive the readings, or would you like those read out loud?
I would like the clerk to read them. Thank you.
Okay, well, 4.16 is approved with and sent to Public Utilities and Public Works. And Madam Clerk, I believe we want 417, 418, and 419 read.
And item 4.17 is an order by Councilor Said that the Commissioner of Public Works install 2 safety bollards on the sidewalk at the intersection of Medford Street and Broadway. Item 4.18 is an order by Councilor Said that the Chief of Police increase traffic enforcement at the intersection of Broadway and Medford Street. Item 4.19 is an order by Councilor Said that the Director of Engineering and the Director of Mobility shorten the cycle time of the traffic light at the intersection of Medford Street and Lowell Street.
Okay, these items are approved and sent to Public Utilities and Public Works. Councilor Klingon.
Actually,
sorry, Councilor Said.
Apologies. These will be sent to Traffic and Parking, all 3. Thank you.
My apologies. Councilor Klingon.
Madam President, I just want to thank the council for putting the one, specifically the Medford Street and Broadway one. That even almost seems like a spot that might call for like a railing. I know the city's been more keen on using railings these days. If what we're talking about is the spot where you basically, as you hang that left, if you're a little kid on a bike or a tricycle or anything, it's extremely steep and extremely dangerous, as it could launch you out into Medford Street. So either way, yeah, hopefully they do something about that. Thanks.
Councilor Said.
Through you, Madam President, to Councilor Klingon, I did meet with Director Rawson today, and I think DPW, Engineering, and Mobility are going to look at that spot and figure out if what makes sense, just replacing them or come up with a completely different, because after a truck accident there, they realized that what we have is actually not safe. And actually right now we have nothing. So thank you for bringing that up. So I'm hoping these departments, as they join forces, they can make that intersection safer.
Okay, that item's approved and sent to Traffic and Parking. Next item.
Item 4.20 is a home rule petition by Councilors Ewan-Campen, McLaughlin, and Davis, proposing a home rule petition to establish a charter for the city of Somerville.
Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. The item is fairly self-explanatory. This is what the document looked like after I did my handwritten changes. So I want to thank our legislative and policy analyst for converting these into an actual electronic version. I think I used a whole pack of flags here because I'm still living in the 90s. But unfortunately, the version that's in the agenda, the tracking isn't going to be super helpful because it shows that the changes to in the mayor's most recent version, as well as the additional changes that were made based on my review, as well as the input of Councilors McLaughlin and Ewan-Campen in our sort of working group, as the same color. So we're working on, I know that I have seen a version where the different authors are different colors, so we're working on getting that into everyone's hands before what I gather will be a meeting, hopefully next week, to discuss or answer any questions. But I will say that the volume-wise, the bulk of the changes that you will see are really not significantly substantive. There's just a lot of, this is my like full-on, in-depth final review, and just drafting inconsistencies, some oversight, some things that we maybe didn't pick up on the first time, but where there are some key differences. So this version retains a 2-year term for both the legislative and executive branch. It adds in a definition of certain multiple member bodies that are sort of quasi-judicial bodies. In other words, like Zoning Board of Appeals, more important ones, and establishes that the council still has reconfirmation authority for those, kind of more substantive MMBs. It adds in the audit provision that the council that there'll be one department where the audit is sort of focused each year, and the council, if we choose so, can direct which department we want that to be once per year, or we can choose not to do so, but that's a change, and it does put back the reconfirmation authority for the city attorney. I think those are sort of the 4 kind of primary substantive changes. As I said, there are some other changes in here that you'll see, and I'm happy to be part of happy to answer questions to the extent I can in a committee meeting. Hopefully, after you all have had a chance to review a track changes version that is more helpful than the one we have right now.
Councilor Ian Gibbon.
Madam President, thank you. I just wanted to say, really big picture, this is a good charter. This represents, I believe, a very good faith series of compromises. I know myself and every other councilor came in with a lot of really high expectations about what we want to achieve. And speaking for myself, over the last, whatever it's been, 2 years, I have just learned a lot through the conversations about what is and is not possible, what is and is not advisable. And I feel very, very supportive of what we are submitting here. And I think that we should vote for it, and I think that we should get it on the ballot. We are up against a little bit of a time crunch, so as has been said, I think it's important that all of us focus on this and let's put a lot of attention on this in the time that we have, and get this thing passed. Thank you all.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you, Madam President. To that point, I'm anticipating a meeting on Tuesday. That is March 18th, so this Tuesday at 6 o'clock. I expect it will be a virtual meeting, and boy, I've got a lot of slides to make between now and then. But yes, so I know we've all got a lot of reading and consideration this weekend, but I'll be hitting send on the agenda for that as soon as this item is referred to committee. Thank you.
Okay, this item is referred to charter. Next item.
The next item will be item 5.1.
Councilor Ewan Kippen.
Thank you, Madam President. I was informed by the mayor's office yesterday that they are still working on the paperwork for these firefighter appointments, so I'd ask that we lay these on the table. This will not affect their start date in the academy.
Okay, so 5.1 to 5.8 will lay on the table. Next item.
That brings us to item 6B, a report of the Committee on Finance, meeting on March 11th, 2025.
Councilor Wilson.
Madam President, Finance Committee met on Tuesday, March 11th with all 5 members present. We took up a 21-item agenda over a 4-hour and 14-minute meeting. We unanimously recommended that you approve tonight an appropriation of $137,000 for IT for an independent security and network audit, $7.6 million bond for the FY25 water main rehabilitation program, a $100,000 UASI grant for elections for a new door for the elections vault, so no one gets locked inside without the ability to get out. A $335,000 state grant for to the police department for crisis intervention training, a $15,000 grant from Fenway Community Health Center to the police department for post-overdose support team. The annual state grant for $87,000 to offset police staffing costs, 2 tiny prior invoices that aren't worth reading, an easement for public access to the park at 346 Somerville Ave, a 2-year contract extension with TSA Consulting Group for administration of the 457B plans for HR, buy a split 3-2 vote, we also recommended that you approve the MAPC grant for $23,000 for the Metro Mayor's Community Safety Initiative, better known as the Shannon Grant. We then unanimously recommended that you not approve, it gets tricky there, 3 requests to fund new positions in water and sewer. Technically 2 new positions, 1 reclass with that's a promotion. We'd heard from staff that these positions were recommended by the consultant and needed to address some billing demands in the department. Ultimately, however, the committee didn't feel that this was the appropriate time to be creating 2 new positions and upgrading a 3rd with the mayor's proposed FY26 budget due to drop in just 2.5 months. Following discussion with the law department, with an update on a meeting that Councilor Ewan Campen, Legislative and Policy Analyst Brendan Salisbury, and I had with Law last week, we kept in committee Councilor Ewan Campen's proposed ordinance automating compensation changes for electeds. We also kept in committee the amendments of the Code of Ordinances that reflect the updated categories and salaries for non-union positions. Some members of the committee had questions, so we agreed to come back to this at our next meeting on the 25th. We also kept Councilor Burnley's order asking for an update on the disparity study in committee. We did hear that a rough draft of that was shared with staff and that we are weeks, not months, away from having the full report shared with this council. Then we marked as work completed following discussion items related to next steps on recommendations for compensation for elected officials, with the update being that the Municipal Compensation Advisory Board is planning to meet to discuss this. We were told they will be gathering input from us on the hours we're working. And an update on the appropriation on tonight's agenda to fund non-union compensation increases this fiscal year. Finally, Director Bean gave a really excellent presentation on the mid-year financial report submitted to this council 2 weeks ago. Whether you read that memo or not, I'd encourage you to watch the video of that presentation. From Tuesday night, it has some really good information in there on where we're at in FY25, but also an early look ahead at FY26. I've likened this to a teaser trailer for a film, you know, those shorter things they show you before the full trailer drops, the 2-minute trailer. The 2-minute trailer being the April presentation that I believe is going to be in a special meeting with the school committee in April. So with that, I ask that this committee report be accepted as submitted. Thanks.
Madam Clerk, do we need some roll calls in there? Okay. Oh, Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just want to give a bit, some roses and thorns to one of our departments based on the meeting we had on Tuesday. One of my requests was for the data regarding the trainings that one of these grants has paid for over the course of many years for mental health trainings for SPD. I'm glad to see that data in front of us, to see which trainings they're going to, which trainings they're not, and there are a number of those trainings where 0 of our officers or dispatchers have gone, despite them being offered several times. And as a rose on that, we also have some data regarding the amount of prescription drugs that the city collects as a part of our national take-back days. So for FY25, which we are currently in, we had a national take-back day in October 2024 and collected 324 pounds of prescriptions. That's quite significant, and it is actually, it's almost more than we collected all of last year, last fiscal year, and we still have another National Take Back Day in April to come. So we will almost assuredly surpass the last year's collections. I also want to note, as part of the presentation that Councilor Wilson just mentioned, there was a note to us that the police overtime budget is currently over $100,000 over what it was allotted, and there's still 30% of the fiscal year to go. I think that is certainly worth the full council knowing and being prepared to receive allocation requests about, and to potentially have some stern conversations about during budget season when we have budgets that are perhaps doubled from what they were allocated for by the time that the bill is due. So with that, happy to take a vote.
Councilor Wilson.
Thanks, Madam President. On Councilor Burnley's point about the police department overtime budget, Director Bean, as I recall, mentioned we might be looking at a $500,000 hole in that one budget line by the time we get to the end of the fiscal year. So definitely worth watching. Thanks.
Committee report is approved as submitted. Madam Clerk.
And that puts two items before the council for a roll call vote. The first is item 25-0279, bonding $7.6 million for fiscal year 25 water main rehabilitation. On that item, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo.
Yes.
Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved. And item 25-0349, easements from JMC STM TGCI Union Square LLC for 346 Somerville Ave. On that item, Councilor Mba.
Yes.
Councilor Wilson.
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Yes.
Councilor Scott.
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burnley.
Aye.
Councilor Said.
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo. Councilor Klingon.
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is going to be item 6C, a report of the Committee on Housing and Community Development, meeting on March 4th, 2025.
Councilor Strezzo.
Okay, so we met on Tuesday, March 4th, hybrid, 7 p.m. All councilors were in attendance. We discussed the Fair Housing Commission's finally, the annual report, had some really great conversations just on fair housing, what the Fair Housing Commission's doing, updates with that. As you can tell, that by the date, it was 23 in the FY23, and of course they submit the report a year later. So the next one will be coming soon, and then we will discuss it at the end of the year. Again, I encourage you to take a look at the minutes on that. We also discussed inclusive playground accessibility and the design and where we're going with that as a city. So we had the commission, we had some special education parents that stopped by, including CPAC. We had some members of the disabilities community. We had a conversation about the types of swings being put forward and a huge emphasis on a certain type of swing that would help with children with low muscle mass, such as the Gen swing, which provides more trunk support, and was encouraging the department to purchase swings such as that. We also talked about the economic impact of small businesses. Now we know that ARPA funds are evaporated and gone, kaput, gone. So now as we pivot to post-ARPA, what does it look like for small business support here in our city, especially in the uncertain times we're facing and about to face some more? So we talked with Director Natkarni, who was there, and also we had our Deputy Director of the Economic Development Department that we had a chance to meet and talk with. The Economic Development Department is focusing on technical assistance and was recently awarded a grant to help with workshops, one-on-one coaching for small businesses. So please spread that out to your constituents if you can. And also there's going to be some more support with communication support, marketing, administration, and operations, which is really exciting. We also had the Teal Square economic commercial area plan discussion. Did we keep that one in committee? No, we marked that work complete. We had Director Galgani stop by to discuss that. I ask you to take a look. And then last, I want to bring attention to the fact that we talked about permanent supportive housing, which we had a presentation was that last possibly last, council meeting. And so we had the CEO of Mass Shelter and Housing Alliance present, and we also had Tom Galgani there from OSPCD, and to discuss the fact that currently 68 permanent state supportive housing units exist within Somerville right now at this moment, and there is a conversation and a plan of implementation for future development, including 40 to 50 units in one project, 62 in another, and 24 as possible sites or about to happen. So this is happening already here. It's really exciting. Take a look at the notes to get the further details on it, and I ask that these minutes be approved as submitted.
Thank you, Councillor. That committee report is approved. Next item.
Item 6D is a report of the Committee on Public Utilities and Public Works, meeting on March 10th, 2025.
Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President, through you. Yes, we all met. We had Clerk Force-Elise was our clerk. Councillor Wilson subbed in for Councillor McLaughlin, who was unable to attend. We covered a number of items, but I'm just going to highlight a couple here. The first one being the potential use of a retention tank, stormwater retention tank on the Holman site, which has basically been sort of a hold-up to any development, is whether or not we're going to need that space for a tent. It actually ties directly into the folks that were here earlier, or the Alewife Brook folks, and the CSO plan, and what the city can do, like at least that's seemingly feasible. Director Raish talked about how a tank on the Holman site, that to do it, they need to do would have to be 5 million gallons versus like the huge one that is the Poplar Pump one, which is already 4 million. So so it sounds like ultimately it's not going to be a place for a huge tank, but it's still unclear whether or not there will be be in need of use for that space for a tank. It's still really just up in the air right now. It's just we can't really say, but it so it is ultimately holding up the future use of that space to some degree, but hopefully we'll have a solid answer soon. The second thing that I want to highlight was the order by Councillor Ewan Campen that the Director of Water and Sewer appear before the Council to address resident claims of the issue basically along that is highlighting the air pockets for cold water lines is leak when people use the expansion tank. As a point of information, Director Herbert reported that there are 1,200 meters remaining to replace. I summarized the claim being made that the new meters, and reported that one resident's claim was denied, and that 5 more complaints have been filed. Examination of these claims has found that the residents' concern began after a new expansion tank had been added to the heating system. The city is working with the heating vendor. So billing histories and consumption patterns were reviewed, but no conclusive evidence was found. Superintendent Viner explained that the meters are tested for accuracy prior to being sent to the city. Councillor Wilson asked if there was any correlation of false positive readings for leaks found.
Recording in progress.
Tanks are involved, and Superintendent Viner responded by saying that he believes it's more of a signal issue and not a leak, adding that when the valve to the expansion tank is shut off, the problem ceases. He continued by saying that generally expansion tanks are not situated near water meter, but the ones in question are on the cold water side and are causing a slight fluctuation, and signaling indicates there may be a leak when in fact there is none. I asked if the case reported about the expansion tank actually increased the usage and of course the cost. Director Herbert said that in this particular case, the year-over-year usage of that individual was the same year-over-year. Actually, the cost slightly went down for that user. She noted that there is a warranty on the meters followed by a maintenance contract. So just with that, you know, I didn't feel like I got a clear answer as to whether or not the expansion tanks and therefore the false readings or leak indications actually were costing residents money. It seems like the city's sort of disputing that, that they're saying that it's just the new meters are more accurate, and that if the resident thinks their cost went up, it has more to do with just the accuracy of the meter. And it's really sounds like, in our minds, it's inconclusive as to what is the cause. I think in the city's mind and the manufacturer of the devices, that everyone says that as far as they can tell, there's nothing wrong. Councilor Wilson did ask for them to run an experiment where they put 2 meters sort of opposite facing each other to see, what the result will be. I think a few of us really feel like it. Actually, I've talked to other councilors have mentioned that, I think we need to replicate this experiment. I think we need to see if this is actually resulting in increased costs or what the situation is, because it does not seem clear from the city. They did make it sound as though the residents were, like, everything was worked out. The residents were satisfied with whatever answer they got, and that monies, they accepted that it didn't actually increase their bill. So there's just a lot of discrepancies in what's actually happening. And I think, the city, Councilor Scott, had an issue where he had called, and I guess the resident was told that, almost uses the threat, like, if they come out and it turns out to not be nothing, it's $150 to you, which, again, with everything that's happened in the last 3 years, starting from the glitch of the software to the meters and the guesstimates, being way, resulting in these charges. I just think that as a city, we really need to be doing everything we can to take these claims seriously and to really chase down whether or not, what exactly is happening here. I know Councilor Ewan Campen continues to pursue this, and so I guess I would say it's TBD still, and I ask that you accept this report as submitted.
Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, thank you to the members of the committee for having this conversation. For better or for worse, I am like a dog with a bone with this. This is nowhere near settled, in my opinion. I appreciate that the administration has begun to engage more seriously around this issue. Let me just be really clear, if there is anyone in the public watching this about water meters, I don't think this is affecting thousands and thousands of people. I don't think that this is like the culprit for everyone that has a water meter issue. But there is a subset of people who have an expansion tank that does not have a check valve, and I very, very strongly believe that there are billing irregularities that are caused by that can be solved with a check valve. Most recently, the city has represented to me that they're going to start working on a public communication around kind of making sure that this kind of check valve is installed to make sure that there are no issues. I think that is a very good first step. Other localities in the country, residents have pointed out to me, have like PDFs that they put on their website that just exactly describe this situation. Different water utility, different meter company, blah, 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 but basically the exact same situation. And they just say, make sure you have a check valve installed so that there's no billing irregularities and so water from your house isn't going back into the water system. I think that's a good first step, but I'm not going to say too much, but I do think that there is like a lot more that we need to do as a city to make this right. And, there's no way that we're going to let it go until it's done.
Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. I really appreciate Councilor Ewan Campen bringing this issue forward and the attention that's being put on this. I'm just going to name, I think the city has a credibility issue on this issue with the folks who have expansion tanks who have gone through this. I think that they are, if they were listening to that meeting the other night, they're going to come away saying, I feel gaslit. That's how they're going to feel. They've observed this, they've documented it, and they're being told it's not a problem, that the valves totally adjust for backflow. And I think we, as a city, we have to figure out how to prove, if we're right, how to prove that this is not happening, because, like I said, if I'm someone who's experienced this, I'm going to be very skeptical of what I heard the other night.
Councillor Scott, then Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. And I just want to emphasize that point in particular, because I have residents on fixed incomes, senior citizens, who are getting a notification that they have a leak in their house. And so they're calling family members, they're calling plumbers, hiring a plumber to come check over the whole house to find a non-existent leak. That in and of itself is harm. And then to reach out to the water department and be told, well, we could send somebody to look at it, but it's going to be $150 to you if we decide there's nothing wrong with your meter. I have a hard time encouraging a constituent to do that, given that every time this issue has been brought up by the city council, somebody from the water department sits there and bald-faced tells us there's no issue with water meters. It's shocking. And it is harmful. It is immensely frustrating, and it makes it hard to consider seriously any of the information or direction. It's hard to say direction for a department that doesn't have a director, but any of the information coming out of the water and sewer department right now. So I appreciate my colleagues who are also fired up about this. And this council, I think, joins my colleague in Ward 3, at least I do, in saying this is very far from over. Thank you.
On that point, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. To what Councillor Scott brought up in terms of that $150 fee that's being charged, in some cases, or threatened in some cases, we were told explicitly by the water and sewer folks that the city is covering that fee if it is one of these issues with an expansion tank and these water meters. So just as a PSA to the public, don't be, if you have an expansion tank and you're seeing this, don't be afraid of that $150 fee. We have it on record, on public record, that you will not be charged that the city is covering that in that specific case.
Councillor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. And just real quick on this, it is interesting how this is one of those things where I've really been sucked in, I know Councillor Camp brought it forward at the beginning, and then it's in my committee, and just by the sheer sort of lack of clarity and answers on this, it just sucks you in and makes you like he said, it's probably a very small percentage of residents, but Councilor Wilson stole my thunder on it's a credibility issue. I mean, with everything that we've had happen with the water department and with meters and water bills, and then as we also voting, we have to increase water bills. We owe it to the residents. I will reiterate, it's a credibility issue, and I also, as far as the fee goes, I mentioned only the part that the resident was told, because it still wasn't fully clear to me by the answers I was getting that whether or not who pays the $150. But furthermore, I agree with Councillor Wilson that it is now on record as far as the uncertainty, but certainly it sounds like the city is most likely covering it, but more importantly, they should talk to their councilor if they are told that, and we can sort of shepherd that through, or if they're told to be in charge, because it doesn't sound like doesn't sound right, and doesn't sound like it should be happening, but okay, more to come.
Okay, the committee report is approved. Next item.
Item 6E is a report of the Special Committee on School Building Facilities and Maintenance, meeting on March 3rd, 2025.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee did meet on that date. All members were present. We were joined by Director Raish from Infrastructure and Asset Management. Talked about a number of items, got a lengthy update on the Winter Hill School process, and I wanted to flag a bit of that discussion because Councillor Klingon raised questions about the when we'll have cost estimates and when we collectively, when cost estimates will be available, and also what they will include, it was, Mr. Raish noted that really won't be available until the fall of 2025, and so the question was asked, how is the CAG, the advisory group, supposed to make a recommendation if they don't have the cost estimates? And effectively the answer is, well, they won't be able to make any decisions until the fall of 2025, and so that do with that what you will in terms of adjusting your timelines. the administration is in the process, was at the time in the process of procuring a project manager, met with a dozen applicants, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, lengthy discussion. Recommend folks take a look at the minutes and or watch the recording if they want to get the details on that one. Other lengthy discussion was around sort of two parts discussion in terms of just a discussion regarding the project plan and budget as it relates to the capital investment plan. And so Director Raish kind of walked the committee through the process and described walkthroughs of the school buildings. We learned some, what to me was some sort of surprising and troubling news about, I think it was Healy in the West, that there's some potential concerns there. And that segued nicely into the related item, which was that the administration develop a swing space to accommodate students if there is another school building that becomes unavailable. And having just heard that it sounds like a couple of our buildings are, there are known concerns that we'll be looking to address in the improvements plan. The short answer in terms of having a swing space is we just don't have one. We don't have a plan. We don't have a space. The Cummings School would be a long way away and require significant work to make that available for students. And effectively, there isn't another option. Director Raish talked about discussions with the Archdiocese regarding a couple of the schools the former schools that they're no longer using that could be a potential option, but couldn't really get into any negotiation without knowing what or when and for how long. And so it sounds like that's part of the potential backup plan if another one of the buildings were to have something go wrong where it would be no longer used. I will note, Madam President, that while in committee we said we wanted to mark that one more complete, the good counselor from Ward 5 has requested that we sever the item and send it back to committee so that we can get an update on that when it's appropriate from the administration. So at the end of my report, I will move to sever that item. And then excuse me, the rest of the discussion, the items were discussed. You can look at the updates. The short version on converting a lab building in the Healy School is that's not going to happen this summer. It's earmarked for next summer because they're focusing on Argenziano this summer, and it's a lot more work than maybe it seems. Again, folks can review the video if they want to see the full detail on that, but just from a timing standpoint, perhaps some disappointing news there for folks that were looking for that building to be converted to something more functional and useful because it's not being used as a lab building, as a lab room. So with that, Madam President, I think I first need to move to sever the item before we approve the committee report. So I'll move to sever. Let's see, this is just swing space. So this is item 25-0234. I will move to sever that item and send it back to committee.
Madam Clerk, do we need a roll call on that? Okay, that item is severed.
And with that, Madam President, I request that the report be accepted as submitted.
The committee report is approved. Next item.
That brings us to item 7.2, a request of the mayor, requesting approval of a home rule petition to authorize the city of Somerville to establish a net zero emission standard for new constructed buildings and major renovation projects.
Councilor Davis, did you want to?
I believe this, sorry, I apologize, Madam President. There were two home rule petitions that are the exact same ones that we saw before. I believe this is one of them. And I mean, it's at the will of the council, but I have no desire to discuss them again. We've already voted for them. We're just sending them back up. So if that's the case with this one, if I've got that right, I don't have my notes with me, but I would no need to see if this one go to committee.
Madam Clerk, can we take this up with 7.3? Let's roll call both. Okay. Let's roll call this item then. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Mbaut, do you have a question?
No, Madam Chair, I just wanted to say both the Committee on Energy Use, and also my Committee on Open Space, Environment, and Energy had endorsed this already. So I think, it's good to go.
Okay. Let's take a roll call.
All right. On item 25.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk. Councilor Scott.
Madam President, I'm not certain that this is one that's been to us before in this text. I believe the two home rule petitions that have been before us with this text are the voting rights for non-citizen residents and a fossil fuel petition.
Do we have anyone from the mayor's office to speak on that?
I just want to make sure that.
Sure.
Hi, Madam Chair. Yeah, I can confirm, it hasn't been read into the record yet, but the second item, yes, refile. And this home rule petition on net zero emissions is a refile with the exact same language. It's just that we need new local approval in order to send it up to the State House again. So just hoping to get these approved so that we can get it moving at the state level again.
Great. Thank you, Madam President, for getting that confirmation.
Okay. We ready to vote? Let's take a roll call.
All right, on the item, 25-0416, the home rule petition to establish a net zero emission standard for new construction and major renovation projects. Councilor Mba?
Yes.
Councilor Wilson?
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen?
Yes.
Councilor Scott?
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilor Burnley?
Aye.
Councilor Said?
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo?
Yes.
Councilor Klingon?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld?
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Next item, Madam
That's
Clerk.
going to bring us to item 7.3, a request of the mayor, requesting approval of a home rule petition to provide legal voting rights in municipal elections for non-citizen residents of the city of Somerville.
Let's take a roll call on this item.
On the item, Councilor Mba?
Yes.
Councilor Wilson?
Yes.
Councilor Ewan-Campen?
Yes.
Councilor Scott?
Yes.
Councilor McLaughlin?
Yes.
Councilor Burnley?
Aye.
Councilor Said?
Yes.
Councilor Strezzo?
Yes.
Councilor Klingon?
Yes.
Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Councilor Pineda-Newfeld?
Yes.
With all councilors in favor, that item is approved.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is item 7.4, a request of the mayor, requesting acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 64G, Section 32DA, to authorize the city to impose a community impact fee of 3% of the total amount of rent upon each transfer of occupancy of professionally managed units.
We were sending this to legislative matters for discussion. Okay, next item.
Madam President, could I move to waive the readings of agenda items 7.5 to 7.10, 7.12, and 10.25, and ask those be sent to Finance? Thanks.
Madam President,
Yes, Councilor Davis.
I would request that 7.5 go to legislative matters. I have questions regarding its interaction with short-term rental ordinance. I think that's probably the best place for that to go.
Okay, let's send 7.5 to legislative matters and the rest to Finance. Madam Clerk, next item.
The next item then is item 7.11, a request of the mayor, requesting approval to pay prior year invoices totaling $239.50 using available funds in the Police Department Medical and Dental Services account from medical invoice.
Yasmin.
Hi, Madam President. I didn't introduce myself before, so I'll do it now. Yasmin Radasi, Legislative Liaison with IGA. So this item was actually mistakenly filed. It's not something that requires City Council approval for medical invoices specifically, so we'd just like to ask that this be withdrawn.
Okay, that item is withdrawn. Next item.
The next item is item 7.13, a request of the mayor, requesting approval of the Surveillance Technology Impact Report for Huddle Focus Cameras.
We will send this to legislative matters. Next item.
Item 7.14 is a request of the mayor, requesting confirmation of the appointment of Alfred William Reimel III as Somerville Housing Authority Police Officer.
Councilor Ewan-Campen.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to refer this to the Confirmation of Appointments Committee and waive the readings of 7:15 and 16, and also refer those to CAPM, please.
Great. Next item, those will be sent to CAPM. Next item.
Item 7.17 is a communication of the mayor conveying the appointment of Matt Iglesias to the Municipal Scholarship Committee.
That item will be placed on file. Next item.
Item 7.18 is a mayor's communication conveying the appointment of Sarah Beckman, Ben Cuba, and Christine Hayes to the Arts Council.
That item will be placed on file. Next item.
Item 9.1.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to waive the readings of 9.1 through 9.26, 10.8 through 10.13, and 10.15 through 10.22, with just a few shout outs very quickly to honor our wonderful, generative community, you'll see that Cookies in Union Square is getting a new awning. You'll see that Curl Bar in East Somerville is having their annual, where is it? What's in there? It's in here somewhere. Their annual celebration block party. It's going to be fantastic. I'm sure they put a lot of effort and time and money into it. And also, there are many parades. Oh yeah, the Curl Bar community event, May 24th. The Veterans Department will be putting on their annual Memorial Day parade on May 25th. So put that in your calendars. And finally, there are many other parades as well, including from the Greek Orthodox Church, which will be having their Greek Independence Day event on March 22nd, 10 a.m. Through 2:30 p.m. With that, I'd like for these items to be approved.
Those items are approved. Next item.
Item 9.27 is a public communication from Tufts University conveying its spring 2025 accountability report.
Councilor Klingon?
Madam President, I'm just curious. You just going to approve that, or would that go somewhere?
It gets placed on file. Do you want it to send to a committee?
Yeah, Housing and Community Development.
Okay. That item will be sent to Housing and Community Development.
Item 9.28 is a public communication from Cole Rainey Slavic submitting comments regarding item 23-1461, the Safe Streets Ordinance.
That item will be placed on file. Next item.
Item 9.29 is a public communication from Michelle Hansen and Matthias Rudolph submitting comments regarding item 24-1584, a zoning map amendment for 11 Horace Street, 5 to 7, 9, 13, and 15 Ward Street, and 15 and 21 South Street.
That item will be placed on file. Next item.
Item 9.30 is a public communication from Abigail Walzer submitting comments regarding Copper Mill project.
That item will be placed on file. Next item.
Item 10.2 is an order by Councilor Said that the Director of Infrastructure and Asset Management work with a consultant to provide this council with the renovation cost of the Cummings School Building.
Councilor Said.
Madam President, can we send this to School Building Facilities and Maintenance?
Yes. Councilor Wilson would like to sign on. So this item is approved and sent to School Building Maintenance and Facilities. I get that wrong every time. SBFM.
Facilities and Maintenance, yeah.
Facilities and Maintenance. Got it. Next item.
10.3 is an order by Councilor Said that the Director of Engineering provide an update on the construction of the Lowell Street crosswalk facing the Magoon Square Green Line Station.
Councilor Said.
I would like to have this sent to Traffic and Parking. I think we may have an update on this. Many constituents have been asking about this crosswalk. As we know, since the Green Line station there opened, there is no crosswalk, which is very unsafe. So, yeah, excited about the update.
Councilor Klingon.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I just want to point out that I've been jealous of. I don't know if Lowell Street specifically has its own funding source from the Max PAC deal that they have that can only be spent in the Lowell Street area. So I just want to state my jealousy for that fund and congratulate the Ward 5 councilor.
Noted. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item 10.4 is an order by Councilor Pineda Newfeld that the Director of Human Resources report to this council the list of all department heads who have completed and a list of those who have not completed all relevant trainings on interpretation and language access.
Councilor Pineda Newfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you all remember our November resolution around welcoming and sanctuary cities, there's a piece in there around ensuring our city staff are well trained, and there couldn't be a more important moment than now to ensure that that's happening. There is a training that SOIA, our Immigrant Affairs Office, has developed around on-demand interpretation, and I just want to know how many of our department heads have taken it, how many have not, and what's the plan to ensure that they take it. I don't know if I was looking back at my old emails, and I know we, as counselors, have to take conflict of interest and cybersecurity trainings, and so there's certainly a way to make trainings like this mandatory for especially for department heads. And I think, given the moment we're in and the conversations we've been having as a community, that this should be utmost priority for our staff. So I hope that we can send this to confirmation of appointments and personnel matters to discuss with the Director of HR.
Well, Councilor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. President, through you, I want to thank our colleague from Ward 7 for bringing this forward. We probably, well, those of us who were on the council at the time will recall, we went through a presentation that was, I won't say it was a training, it was like a training on what's involved, right? So we saw how complex it can be, needing to start far in advance to make sure you have interpretation services for for a public meeting, any sort of event. As someone who's put in a number of these 4 public hearings over the years, I agree, it's really important to make sure that staff are trained on this because there are a number of moving pieces on this. So I think this is excellent. Thanks.
Councilor Said.
Through you, I would like to thank the councilor for putting this forward. And I would like to co-sponsor this. Well, I guess it's in order, but thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Councilor Said would like to sign on, and as well as Councilor Wilson, Councilor Baugh. All right, and this will be approved and with a copy to confirmation appointments and personnel matters. Next item.
Item 10.5 is an order by Councilor Pineda-Neufeld that the Director of Mobility install speed humps on Elmwood Street.
Councilor Pineda-Neufeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For those who don't know, as part of the city, there's been some significant traffic calming on Cameron Ave, which is a cut through to Cambridge, that has really slowed drivers down. It's a pleasure to cross that street now with my little one, when it was not before. But drivers, being as creative and innovative as they are in our city, are finding side streets to surpass our speed humps and our traffic calming measures. And so they are turning onto a very small street to get onto Elmwood, which is one way up. I'm sorry, it's two-way, but it really is made for one way up to Holland, and flying down. And so there are children in that neighborhood, and I've gotten many requests from constituents to have some speed humps or other traffic calming measures on Elmwood. So I'd love for this to be sent to traffic and parking.
All right, that is approved. Copy to traffic and parking. Next item.
Item 10.7 is an order by Councilor Burnley that the Director of Engineering install a curb cut in front of the Edgerly Education Center's accessible entrance on Bon Air Street over the summer.
Councilor Burnley.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is pretty self-explanatory. I had the opportunity to go to Edgerly recently and talk with some educators, some students, and also some volunteers who are parents in this community who just put their time and effort into supporting our students as much as possible. And one of those volunteers pointed out to me the inaccessibility of the building, particularly on Bon Air Street, where there is there's a sign that says handicap entrance. But to actually get to into that entrance, you have to go all the way around to the accessible part of the sidewalk on Cross Street, and then kind of work your way back. There's not a direct, just straight up ramp to get you to this entrance, and that's something that this volunteer was really hoping and had talked to other people about pushing the city to do over the summer while the students are out. I know that requests like that have come from counselors before about us making changes over the summer. I'm hoping that this is a small enough one that we can actually do this without massively inconveniencing our budgets, our capital improvement plans. I wouldn't expect that it is, because the sidewalk is not too aggressive by many standards, but for the folks who need it, who are in a wheelchair or who have mobility needs that need to be accommodated, it would make a world of difference if they could just straightforwardly get into the building in which they work. So I'd like for this to go to committee, just so we can have a follow-up on it, and we can put that in school buildings.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam President. I have some positive news. Hopefully, we can end this meeting on a high note, that the city is planning on doing this summer. I talked to Brian Postlethwaite about it. He's kept me informed about it for several months, about their plan to address this issue. So I'm very grateful to him for including me in that conversation, even though we didn't have to. It's a school building. But yes, it's going to happen, and I thank him for making it happen.
Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam President. Let's celebrate this. It's big. I was approached by a teacher at the Winter Hill who has accessibility needs, and this has been a real issue. And so this will be great news for the Winter Hill community.
Madam President?
Yes, Councilor Davis.
If I may suggest, since we've had an update, could we place this on file rather than send it to committee? Sounds like we're just going to hear the same thing.
Councilor Burnley, would that work for you?
Yes. Could we send a copy of something on file to the department just so they know we've talked about it? Yeah, I would just like for this to just put them on us, yeah.
Okay, so this item is approved with a copy sent to?
The engineering.
Engineering, okay. Okay, great. Next item.
The next item is item 10.14, a new flammables license for Paula Clarendon LLC at 20 Stephenson Amon Street, storing 1,000 gallons.
Councilor Burnley?
I'd like this to be sent to committee. Thank you.
Send that to licenses and permits. Next item.
Item 10.26 is a public communication from Harvard University conveying its spring 2025 accountability report.
I'm sorry. Let's send this to Housing Community Development.
Item 10.27 is a public communication from Michael Curtis submitting comments regarding tree work.
This item is placed on file.
And that brings us to the end of the agenda, Madam President.
Are there any late items, Madam Clerk?
There are no further items before this council.
Councilor Wilson moves to adjourn. We are adjourned.